Hey everyone, welcome back to Lookout. Is it fire season yet? Well, it depends on where you live, but right now, not really in California. We're getting there, but we just went through a weekend of high winds and no big fires started. There's some fires burning elsewhere in the country, but today's episode is about answering that question. Every year, people ask, is it fire season yet? And there's a lot of great resources on the internet for looking at the big picture of where fire season is occurring, and also for predicting when we'll start to need to worry about big fires happening in California. Fire season is kind of a traveler. It moves around a lot, and so generally fire season starts off its year in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and we see our early season fires there. Hotshot crews often start their season in the Southwest or in Texas. Then we get what's called the monsoon, and that's a weather pattern that moves in and brings in a lot of moisture and thunderstorms into Arizona, New Mexico, desert Southwest. Generally, that puts out their big fires. Then that monsoonal moisture can get pulled up into California, from kind of now until, the end of July, even into August. We can get what's called an inside slider when we get a low that kind of moves in over the kind of eastern side of the Sierra. That allows moisture from the monsoon, from the storms that are going on in Arizona and New Mexico, to kind of get pulled up into the Sierra Nevada and even up into the southern Cascades. And oftentimes that monsoonal push is what will cause our big dry lightning storms in California. California, then, our fire season kind of booms in Northern California from July and through August into early September. Usually things mellow out quite a bit in the first couple weeks of September, though in September we can get strong east winds. And then fire season moves into the Pacific Northwest around the same time, kind of late July, early August. They also can get kind of monsoonal influence and lightning storms. Montana and Idaho kind of fire about now and a little later. And then in the fall, we get our strong east winds. We see fires in Southern California. So right now in late June, statistically, we're not really into fire season big time in Northern California. We have had big fires in Northern California in this time of year, but generally they're caused by massive lightning ignitions, and it's rare for us to have really big, large kind of campaign fires in Northern California until usually like third week of July. And then statistically, late July, early August, we've got our fuel moistures then are kind of at their seasonal lows. Right now what's happening in the mountains is that all of the kind of brush and everything is kind of going into its peak growing season. And so what that means is the manzanita and the ceanothus and everything else is taking up a lot of moisture, and that makes it difficult for that to burn. And we've talked about that before. You can look on our channel and look for videos about live fuel moisture. So it's kind of counterintuitive that when it's real hot in like early July, that the manzanita might not burn at all. But that's kind of how it works. That stuff, all the kind of small woody plants start to go dormant in the kind of late summer. And the seasonal clues we look for, say in Northern California, is when the buckeye starts to kind of get shriveled up and lose its leaves, when the poison oak turns red. Those are hints that the summer growing season for woody plants is coming to an end. And so usually old timers will say, yeah, once the buckeye lose their leaves in late July, you know that it's fire season in Northern California. So for right now, I was just up in Lassen County. All the undergrowth up there is green. There's green grass in the woods. The ceanothus up at 6,000 feet is in like heavy flower. The buckbrush, it smells like vanilla and it's big white flowers. That stuff, you could take a blowtorch to that stuff right now and it wouldn't burn. So I want to talk a bit about some of the resources that we have for looking at that stuff. Looking at the big picture, some good tools for seeing where fires are across the country are the MODIS satellite. These are heat satellites, and the red dots show you where there's been heat detected in the last 6 hours, and then the other tone of red is 6 to 12 hours. So you can see that there's not really much going on the West Coast at all. If you look like during one of our big campaign fire seasons or something, this is just like looks like someone cut their finger and bled all over the map. So right now, if you look at the MODIS, you can see that we've got a couple of clusters of fires that are kind of winding down a bit in southern Utah, southwest Utah, around Cedar City. Not much else going on really in Utah. Not much going on anywhere in the big picture. There's a fire that has been kind of cranking over here in south of Gardnerville, and that sounds like it's kind of wrapping up a bit. The Connor fire. It's interesting, you can see that the CAL FIRE flight doesn't match what MODIS saw. So MODIS actually sometimes, when there's a big plume going, the satellite can be off by miles. Here there's a big plume of heat. Right here it looks like the satellite was probably way off to the west, and when it sees the plume of heat up here, up high off the ground, it projects. It thinks that it tries to project that direction of heat onto the landscape mathematically. And so it draws all these dots out here, even though that just meant that this fire was blowing up right then and it was tall right here. So MODIS and VERS are common and one of the better sources we have for kind of daily big picture, but they can be really inaccurate. So take that with a grain of salt when you see on a fire a satellite heat map. Oftentimes they can be way off. We don't use them for kind of tactical level intel. So MODIS is a good source for real-time intel. Another source that has got a lot of resources is the GACCs. The GACCs are the Geographic Area Coordination Centers. There's a bunch of them. These are the different Geographic Coordination Centers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different GACCs. And GACCs are basically like a regional dispatch center for each area of the country. And so if you go to the National GACC website, which is also called NICC, National Interagency Coordination Center, that's a good spot to see the big picture. And it'll tell you preparedness levels, right? And so right now, Alaska is at preparedness level 4, meaning they're kind of short on critical resources. East Coast is at preparedness level 1, meaning basically got nothing going on. Northern California is at a 2. So when you see that we get nationally up to like preparedness level 5, that means that fires aren't able to get the resources they need. And right now the national level is 3, meaning it's fire season. There's some stuff going on. There's 6,000 people assigned to fires right now. 3 is kind of the middle. 4 means, hey, there's a lot going on and there's shortage of critical resources like hotshot crews or air tankers. When we get to level 5, it just means that there's not enough critical resources for every fire, and the NICC, the National Coordination Center, is having to triage, and they are looking at where are the fires that are threatening towns, where are the fires that are threatening critical infrastructure or valuable forest land, and then they send the resources to those. So right now, preparedness level 3 means pretty much the fires in most areas have the resources they need. It's just kind of average fire season conditions. We talked about the different geographic areas. These are the GACCs. So California's got 2 GACCs just because we have so many people and so many fire resources. This is what we call Forest Service Region 4, the Great Basin, which is basically Nevada, Utah, and portions of southern Idaho. A lot of desert fires, some timber fires here in the north, but a lot of the GACC action is in the desert. Southwest is high elevation kind of timber and a lot of desert. Southern GACC's huge. The state forestry in a lot of these states like Texas, South Carolina, etc., they tend to handle a lot of their issues themselves. They don't need as many federal resources. Same with the eastern GACC. There's Michigan and kind of the timbered northern plain or northern Midwest has Forest Service presence, but a lot of the eastern states kind of handle their own business with state agencies like their Department of Natural Resources, etc. The Northwest GACC is dominated by kind of the Forest Service. There's a lot of timber, and so that's based out of Portland. And then Northern California GACC is based out of Redding, and California's got a real kind of mix of players between CAL FIRE, local government, and the Forest Service. Southern California GACC, Forest Service is still a player there, but it's there's a lot of municipal resources like LA Fire Department, LA County Fire Department, and then counties in Southern California contract with, most of the counties in Southern California contract with CAL FIRE to provide county-wide fire departments. So each one of these GACs has its own website, and these websites are a great source of intel. So if we go to the Northern California GAC, the entry page here kind of shows you a large fire map. There's a lot of the same intel that gets used to feed apps like Watch Duty that show you where current incidents are. You can click on these and they'll give you information on the incident. Watch Duty does a better job of kind of packaging this and giving you a fresher intel. What I really like about the GAC websites is they've got a lot of intelligence. Each GAC has a predictive services division, which is kind of an intelligence center that has dedicated meteorologists, fire behavior analysts, and kind of fire logistics folks all under one roof. And so there's some great resources here on the GACs for the predictive services. If we look at the Northern California GAC page here, under predictive services, we've got intelligence, weather, fire and fuels danger, outlooks, and analysis. And so when it comes to asking the question about if it's fire season yet, if we come in here and we look at the outlooks, but we've got a bunch of different products here that are useful in looking at the seasonal outlook, right? So if we look at Northern California 4-month outlook, it brings up this report. It says that we've got above normal significant fire potential in the Sacramento Valley and in the Coast Ranges for June. We haven't really seen that. This came out on June 1st. So oftentimes these aren't really, these are kind of a wild ass guess. So they said we'd have above average seasonal fire behavior. We haven't really had much going on for any fires that have gotten very large in June. But same folks are saying that July and August are above normal significant fire potential, and September, all of Northern California is. So these forecasts, you got to take them with a grain of salt, but they can be pretty good. And the tighter you get on them, the better they get. So this June forecast is a month old now. But if we look at the 7-day forecast for Northern California, it gives you this kind of cool color-coded map. And you can go through kind of day by day, and it'll tell you, like right now, the browns mean there's a moderate risk and it's dry. Yellow means there's low risk of significant fires, and green means there's no risk at all. And you'll see in here if there's kind of special conditions in the forecast for lightning or winds or anything else. So if we look at the next 7 days for Northern California, it's pretty much low risk across the board. We just went through a big wind event here. Nothing happened. We've got no big wind events for the next week that are going to trigger high-risk days. Nice thing about this particular 7-day outlook is that you can look at different parts of the country. So, if we're interested in the desert Southwest, they're saying right now, hey, New Mexico and Texas, no real risk. It's dry in Arizona, and then the Four Corners area, there's high risk today for wind. So 7-day significant fire potential. These are great, great resource for kind of trying to get an idea of like, hey, what's next week going to be? They've got a nice narrative in here about the weather conditions. They talk about thunderstorm chances, and then they've got kind of the geeky section that I like to look at is the fire and fuels potential. And so they talk about the grass, the live brush, and long-term drought. So you can check out the link here in the description for the potential for all the GACs, but also for these forecast outlooks. So if we go back to predictive services outlooks, there's also supporting documentation that explains how they create these products. There's links to the software they use. So that's the outlooks. Fuels and fire danger, also on the GACC site, is a really useful intel kind of package. They've got this dashboard that shows all the different weather stations. Oh, this is the 3-day trend, is that they're saying, okay, here in El Dorado National Forest, 3-day trend, no change. So that's kind of useful. It tells you like what parts are going to get drier, what parts are going to get less dry. So it starts to get kind of geeky in here, but this is like energy release component, meaning an index of the different fuel conditions combined with weather to tell you how dry the fuels are and how receptive they are to large fire spread. So this is in the fire and fuels danger section of the GACC page. And then down here, you can choose and create charts for specific areas. So like I was just in the Northern Sierra, and this is showing me a seasonal graph of the energy release component. So red is kind of the maximum that's been measured in the last 22 years. This is climatology from 2000. And the blue line shows us where we're at right now. So gray is the average, 22-year average, and red is the 22-year maximum. And then green is kind of the 7-day forecast. So we don't tend to get our biggest fires when we're around average. Average conditions are just that, average. We get our biggest fires when we're in extraordinarily dry conditions. Almost all our biggest fires happen when we're close to maximum ERCs, energy release components. So that also gives you a hint, like, okay, yeah, we're above average, but we're like nowhere near the max. Firefighting is pretty good at putting out like the 97th percentile, up to about the 97th percentile. So if you're kind of hanging around, here between 80 and 97 or 80 and 90%, like we usually don't get big fires in that range. So that's ERCs. You can look here, you can create graphs of the 1,000-hour dead fuel moisture. So if we're looking at the Northern Sierra, we get critically low here on, this is how dry the big down logs are. So like we're below average in fuel moisture. A lot of this kind of averages are based on like maybe a heavier snowfall year. So right now dry fuels are below average, but they're nowhere near the maximum dryness. And you can see these seasonal trends here. The 100-hour fuels are kind of like the medium-sized sticks, right? Small logs. And some places here we can see this year that our kind of 4-inch logs have approached maximum dryness, in the beginning of June and in the beginning of May. So that's all good stuff that's available here on the Fuels and Fire Danger Outlook. The weather tab here on the GACC maps also has significant fire potential by zone of the Northern California fire areas. And then here they give you some nice products that kind of summarize like the hourly fire danger and also links to fire weather stations. Intelligence is this is kind of one of the good catch-all pages. This has got daily situation report. It's got kind of a blog, this news and notes blog. Oftentimes when things are really active, the dispatchers at the GACC will pretty much type this kind of running blog on what's happening. So it's a good place to go to see like what's happening with new fires, and it also gives you a lot of information here about like the incident command teams, which ones are on rotation, which ones are up next. As a contractor, I use this a lot just to figure out like, hey, what teams are going to the next big fires. And so this Intel page has a lot of great resources. They have links to CHP's kind of running blog of their incidents. They've got Caltrans, links to cameras. They've got their daily report and the daily situation report. And the daily sit report is pretty good in that it shows you for each department in the state what they've got going on. And then if there are any large fires, it gives you a lot more detailed information on that. Anyway, you can spend days on the GACCs, and the nice thing is that there's a website for each GACC. This is the website for Southern California. Most of the GACC websites are structured the same way as far as having their intel, their weather, their outlooks all in the same basic format. So those are the GACC websites. Great resource. Another website I use a lot, the Fire Weather Dashboard. For this, you type in your location. Let's just say So this fire weather dashboard, what's nice about this is it summarizes the weather in a way that's useful to someone who's primarily interested in fire. So it gives you your temperatures coming into the week. It gives you your minimum temperatures, which is helpful for seeing like how well fires are going to lay down at night. Gives you your minimum relative humidity and your maximum relative humidity. And those numbers are helpful for figuring out fire danger, because when we see humidities down in the 20s or teens, it tells us it's really dry. But also from a fire perspective, we're really interested in the recovery at night. So it's nice seeing the min and max forecast RH right next to each other. Here we've got, Chester tomorrow is going to be really dry, 14%, but then it's going to come up to 71 at night, 71% RH, which is a huge amount of recovery, which means that in the morning hours, the grass and pine needles and everything have too much moisture in them to really burn well. So this maximum RH is actually a really helpful tool for understanding the potential for a fire to lay down at night, which is when we put them out. You don't tend to have, unless the fire's already established, we tend to be really good at putting out fires overnight, even if they run a couple hundred acres the first day, when we've got a really solid humidity recovery and it's cold at night. Fire just doesn't like cold, and it doesn't like humidity. Other stuff that's useful in here is it gives you kind of your mixing height. So it tells you, if you're a prescribed burn boss, how well your smoke's going to go up and mix in the atmosphere. It gives you a ventilation rate, which is kind of helps you understand the stability of the atmosphere. And it gives you kind of the minimum ventilation rate. So this can be useful if you're burning to figure out hey, I can't burn because I'm not going to get enough lift on my smoke, and it's going to pack in and smoke out the town nearby. Still on the fire weather dashboard, it's got this nice hourly summary that goes out several days. So, if I'm trying to plan a burn on Tuesday, I can look in here and see there's going to be wind gusts, in the afternoon. So maybe I want to light early and be done with that. And it gives me also my wind direction with both an arrow and a number, and kind of my transport wind speeds and everything else. So this is the fire weather dashboard. Excellent resource for kind of tactical level weather and predicting. If there's a large fire that's taking off, I'm going to be looking at this to see what the outlook is for that, and then those parameters, that help us control fire. The main thing on this site is you have to make sure you search for your spot, because if you don't, if you just come in and load the page, it defaults to Minnesota, and then you're wondering why things look so wacky in your weather. Anyway, those are a couple of my favorite sites. To answer that question, is it fire season yet? I don't know. What's the GACC say? The GACCs, they have all the best information. It's nice that they go and put that all in one place. Another thing that's really useful for getting a sense of regional scale fire hazard is the Webcam network. This is Hamilton Mountain up on top of Fredonia Pass near Westwood. And you can kind of pan through and you can see oh, look, up here at 6,000 feet, grass is green, the brush is in flower, and it's moist. We're looking at the mountain meadows here. You can see that the mountain meadows, they're still green. Oftentimes, we'll see a red flag warning come out for an area in the early summer, and you go and look at the webcams for the grasses, and the hills are still green. And so that's been really kind of one of the miracles of the kind of last 10 years, is getting this webcam network set up. And you start to get to know which webcams can show you the area that you're interested in. This is Stover Mountain. These are also nice for tracking storms. See hey, what's the cumulus buildup doing? And for seeing kind of large scale patterns in the fuels. Last year, the park fire was burning out here, and people in Chester were concerned. But you could look at this and you could see hey, this entire area between Chester and the fire has been salvage logged following the Dixie fire, and there's just no fuel out there. So the webcams are ops.alertcalifornia.org. Excellent resource. Another thing that I love about the webcams is you can look in animation. And this can be really handy during a lightning bust. You can look at this and you can see oh, look, it rained. maybe you look and see that there was like 5 lightning strikes in Lassen Park. And then you look at this animation, you can see like, oh, and they got totally soaked in the rain. So love the webcams. So I'll put a bookmarks link up on the Lookout that has my Intel bookmark collection. I'll edit it down a little. I recommend, build yourself a set of bookmarks. Get to know your way around this stuff, and then you can become a community resource. One thing we're trying to fight is that it's really nerve-wracking to live in high fire hazard landscapes, but there's large portions of the year where you really don't have to worry too much about wildfire. And so the better we can all become informed on the resources available to understand this stuff, and the more we can kind of educate and help our community work through this information, I think it makes it easier for us to live in some of these places and not be just kind of petrified every time you smell smoke. So that's our intention here with the Lookout. If you appreciate this stuff, keep checking out the Lookout, subscribe here, and this is what we do. We talk about fire science, we talk about landscapes, we talk about historic fires, we talk about fire behavior, and make all these things accessible to you, our viewers. Thank you very much.